That's not a ringing endorsement of a prosecution. That's a judge saying, essentially, there's just enough here to send it to a jury. Barely. The ruling itself says nothing about guilt. It's not proof of wrongdoing. What it is a low bar, cleared by a thin margin, on evidence the court itself has called circumstantial. Councilman Price has pleaded not guilty. He denies the allegations. And after 3 terms representing his district, he's term limited and on his way out of office, regardless of how this case ends. Which raises a fair question. What exactly is served? By dragging a longtime champion for working families in South Los Angeles through a trial that even the presiding judge doesn't sound confident about. We're not saying elected officials should not be held accountable. They should. But accountability means something different from a prosecution that struggles to convince the very judge overseeing it. Curran Price deserves his day in court, and he deserves the presumption of innocence any one of us would want for ourselves or a loved one, especially when the bench itself has doubts. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Deon Raymond, Justice Correspondent and host of the Justice Files. As always, we welcome your feedback. KBLA Talk 1580. $1 trillion might do it. A couple trillion. We're talking reparations. We do that every Friday at this time. Second hour of the show. We call it Freedmen Friday because when we ended the Civil War, ended, the formerly enslaved black persons of this country were called freedmen, designated such by the government. I call it Freedmen Friday because we focus on reparations, all of the repair, everything that was meant to happen back in 1865 that we are still struggling to make happen today. And so we've been doing this for a couple years now. I'm really happy to welcome in the Chief Wellness Officer of Blacksmith Psychological Consultative Services. They're a psychological services provider for the U.S. Olympics and Paralympic Committee. The leader, Dr. Ramel Kweku Smith Ayarifi Amoasi, is out of Milwaukee, and he went to University of Milwaukee. He's got his bachelor's in psychology, went on and got a master's of science in educational psychology, a doctorate of philosophy at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and he's been president of Blacksmith Psychological Services since 2007. Dr. Kweku, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on with you, Dominique.
Yeah, it's always great to hear from you. And you're, obviously you're in the field of psychology, but you're also very much committed and interested in Black history and Black liberation.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, everything that we do is it's an African-centered liberation film, and what we do is like, how do we, as descendants of those who were enslaved, still survive in this wilderness of North America? So it's always, I have an unapologetic love for all people, but a special love for my people.
And so, when
you center this idea, and we were just talking about Biddy Mason, right? An enslaved woman who walked from Mississippi to California and ended up owning a large part of downtown and helping to found one of our most prominent churches, Biddy Mason. So when you go from centering psychology to a conversation about reparations, does it seem like a leap to you, or does it seem like a logical progression?
No, I mean, it's a perfect intersection because, everything is interrelated in life. So when we start to talk about that, and so how can you be a person of African descent and not talk about reparations? I know oftentimes when you talk about Freedmen Friday, you ask people, well, how do you define reparations? And some people won't answer the question. Some people will give a very clear definition. And I think one thing that all people can agree on is about how do you repair harm. And if you are people who have been harmed since the very, very beginning, that means every intersection of life needs to be repaired. Every area of human activity. Nellie Fuller Jr. used to talk about these 9 areas of human activity that we all deal with. And so you talk about psychology and health, all of those things. Those are in those same areas that needs to be repaired. So 100% it correlates.
I know that there's a large group of folks, myself included, who feel like, okay, reparations has to include the check. It has to include land. It has to include economic, make goods, economic healing. But when we talk about psychological healing and the impact of not just enslavement, but Jim Crow and the subsequent harms, many of which continue to this day, is that something that is on us? Is that our own charge, or is that something that we should somehow be in partnership with this country, these nation's institutions, or its corporate sort of class?
Now, you couldn't have asked a better question, because when we talk about reparations, I believe in everything what you just said. Pay us what you owe us, give us everything. But at the beginning of reparations, the first thing that has to be done is an acknowledgement of the wrong. Like, hey, we did you wrong. And not only is it an acknowledgement of that wrong, but then there's an apology, a sincere apology. And what I tell everybody that I work with from a clinical setting, and it's outside of reparations, but just in general, I said an apology is just the start. It's like a puppet. But when you start to animate that puppet, those are the actions of that apology. So the second part of the reparations goes from acknowledging and apologizing to what then to repairing the harm. So that means I'm going to replace what I took, or I'm going to give back in a different way what was took. And before any land, any other things can be given, we need that true apology to say, hey, you know what? You are truly welcome. When we look at the Constitution, I think it's one of the most beautifully written documents ever. It's just a shame it was written by hypocrites and it was not followed through for all people. So when we start to look at that, the first thing I think when you talk about a psychological healing, because just for example, Dominique, if I harm you and I say I'm sorry, but I don't mean it, everything else don't really matter, because you said I still don't feel that warmth of inclusion. And when we talk about America specifically, what that apology starts to say is this: we are sorry and we see you as a true American, not a second-class citizen, not somebody who's our burden, but really a part of this true fabric. And since we built it, we are the fabric to say we not only recognize you as part of the fabric, but we recognize you as being the pillar and the foundation of helping to get this country to where it's at. And until we get that level of apology, all the other things we get, which would be good, it still would be hollow and ringing true, specifically as it relates to continual justice, because one of the other icons of reparation is saying not only are we sorry, not only are we going to repair the harm, but we're going to promise not to what? To redo the harm. And as we look at what America is doing now, not only are they not going towards reparations, they're going towards backwards. They're going towards the thing to eliminate and remove rights. So any apology that might have been given half-heartedly in the past proves to be what? Disrespectful and untrue.
Well, you kind of just answered the question that I was going to ask, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway, because it could be a follow-up to what you're talking about, which is that some people do feel like we don't want any apologies. Apologies are BS. The state of California, one of the few things that has passed, and there have been a handful, since the task force, the reparations task force here in California, released their massive report, was an apology. And there's plenty of people that turn their nose up at that and feel like, well, that's just a symbol. That doesn't mean anything. I had always wondered, like, I wouldn't think it would help you in court. I would think it would help you to build something. But it sounds to me like there's a mental health aspect to an apology, and also what there are elements that make a legit apology as opposed to a phony one.
And see, that's it right there. Is the apology sincere? Because I tell you this, and this is working with people, working with couples who've gone through abusive situations, going with couples where people have taken money or are taking the money that was allocated for certain things and mishandled it. I'm talking about friends, siblings who were hurt and mad at each other. The apology, when done sincere, oh, it matters so much. Because what did we say a true part of the sincerity of the apology is? It's the following actions afterwards. So words mean nothing if the actions don't follow. But could you imagine if America apologized? Let's say what if, hypothetically. But then they started to treat every black American, every person of African descent, the same way that all what they considered, and that was really the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant land-owning man in the Constitution, treated us like that. Then America truly would be the great place. It would be that great experiment where everybody could come in and be treated as one. What makes that apology insincere is that what? We know that it's not true. So that's why we don't need an insincere apology. But if we had a sincere apology that followed with actions, were giving us true justice, where we didn't see our children being beaten and killed mercilessly in the streets without any justice, if we saw correct schools, if we didn't see the harm and harassment that's taking place within the medical field, if we saw those things, oh, that apology would be sweet and beautiful. We go back to the civil rights, as you said, in 1865, when this was supposedly the time for what? The soul of America to redeem herself. And that's what it looked like when Abraham Lincoln, not giving him too much credit, but just that whole scene in that time where you say, oh, guess what? We are freedmen. My uncle's name was Charles Freeman, and I used to be so jealous of his name because he said, I didn't know we didn't know what our name was, but we knew we was a free man. They had that right to rename themselves. And so when you look at those 12 years that we had in freedom, you say, oh, what a time it was. But when they saw how educated we got, when they saw how much we took to politics, when they saw we already had the skills from being in the fields those years, they said, oh, we got to step back. And that's when Jim Crow stepped in, because they had to find another way, even though we had convict leasing, so we don't want to act like it was perfect during that time. But when they did Jim Crow, that was to double down and say, we can't do slavery in the way it was, but we're going to reinvent it. So that made all of those apologies. Not only was it that, but the new leaders, Andrew Jackson, came in and said, hey, we're going to take away Field Operation 15. We're going to take away the land that you got. And not only are we going to take away the land, we're going to pardon those Confederate soldiers who fought against the Union and give them and their families land back that was taken away from them for being traitors. So when you have apologies that go backwards, those mean nothing because those actions didn't follow. But if America would, and I said again in a hypothetical situation, if those words could ring true and sincere, oh, for a mental health standpoint, it would be beautiful, because just like our ancestors from 1865 to 1870 was living amongst those who had enslaved them but was turning it around, that's the beauty of our people. We are a magnanimous and forgiving and loving people. We were actually going to live with those who are our captors once they gave us, well, once we got our freedom back. They didn't give us nothing back, but once they stopped trying to hinder us from it and was giving us a pathway to citizenship, to freedom, to having equity within the country, they were willing to do that even after all of that pain and brutality. So nobody can tell me that an apology doesn't mean anything. It just has to be a sincere apology followed by actions.
Dr. Kweku is here, and if you have something to say, you can call in 800-920-1580. He's the president of Blacksmith Psychological Consultative Services, LLC. We'll continue the conversation, the mental health side of repair, on this Freedmen Friday, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
just in case you missed our Procrastination Crenshaw Town Hall.
Originally, the project was supposed to end, I was told, October of that year, and now we're looking at 5 years later, and it still hasn't been finished. I still have no parking lot. We have to park blocks away to get to work, along with my clients with sick animals. I have elderly clients, I have handicapped clients. They have to, either suffer through, park somewhere far, and make their way to the clinic with their sick animal so I can treat them. Or they can choose to go somewhere else, which is more convenient. And so I think the majority of people would probably choose the more convenient way. Luckily, I definitely have some clients that will still, make that trip. So it's definitely been impacting my business for 5 years. Like I said, my father, he has 3 sons, as affectionately known as the Hardy Boys. We're all veterinarians. My oldest brother has a practice in Long Beach. My middle brother has a practice in Arcadia. He instilled all his greatness in us, and so we're continuing tradition. I would definitely continue the tradition of Angeles Vista Pet Medical Center. We're on the corner of Crenshaw and Vernon. But this impact appears to be going on way too long. Something needs to be done. It has to be concluded.
Making sure they follow through. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
The KBLA 1580 app puts the realest conversations right in your pocket. Stream live wherever you are in the world. No static. No searching the dial. A crystal clear connection 24/7, exactly when you want it. We recommend that you keep automatic updates enabled. Set it and forget it. So the app stays up to date with store requirements, bug fixes, and new features as we roll them out. Download the KBLA 1580 app today and stay plugged into the conversation everyone's having.
I love days like these at the pool, but my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis can sometimes take me out of the moment. I'm ready to make a splash with clearer skin thanks to Skyrizi, risankizumab Riza. Skyrizi is a prescription-only injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. At 4 months, most people saw 90% clearer skin when measured from head to toe, and many were even 100% plaque-free. People also saw significant improvement in psoriasis symptoms of pain, redness, itching, and burning.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions, increased infections, or lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor about any flu-like symptoms or vaccines.
Now there's nothing on my skin, thanks to Skyrizi, and that means everything. Ask your doctor about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist-prescribed biologic in psoriasis. Visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZI to learn more.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
Talking with Dr. Kweku, talking mental health and reparations, and the question of an apology, the question of how we are treated in the broader society. I mean, we can go into that a little bit more in depth, but I want to make sure that the hour doesn't pass without looking at which part of the repair that we have to do in terms of our spirits, our soul, our psyche, is our own charge. I think about, Dr. Joy DeGruy in post-traumatic slave syndrome, where she speaks on habits and reflexes that we have that we've inherited from enslavement and Jim Crow, which we may not even be conscious of.
Yeah. You in my notes, because I love the Queen Mother, Joy. I've had a chance to speak with her and work with her on several occasions when she's come to Milwaukee, and I think her book hits the point. But I think it's a term that we all know. When we hear the term Sankofa, it's a return and go get it. You've had the chance to, put your feet on the soil of the motherland. And when you go back, what you recognize, especially being in those dungeons where they held our ancestors, you see the pain, you see the frustration, you see the hurt. But you also wonder what type of currency was in our DNA that allowed them to survive that, to allow them not only to survive, but to thrive in the land that we are. So what's inside of us? There's a sporting brand called Actively Black, and they talk about one of their taglines is greatness is in our DNA. And I think what the indoctrination of America has done is made us forget who we were. And it's just like a person who had some type of traumatic brain injury and some form of amnesia, and they didn't know how great they were. They have to relearn. But the beautiful thing about when you go back to the Sankofa and you start to learn exactly who you are, you start to recognize who you are, And then what you do is, I don't want to get too technical, but now we go into quantum physics with this healing. Because when you start talking about quantum physics, you understand the first law of thermodynamics, what the energy is neither created or destroyed, it's just what is transferred. So what we got to understand is how do we transfer back from that negativity to that positivity. And when you get into that, you go into quantum entanglements. And that's how do we reach back to our ancestors and even reach to the future of our posterity and bring all of those voices from time and space together and to say, what? Let me recognize who I was and who I can be. I think one of the biggest lines that kind of bring that together, even though it was science fiction, was from the movie Sinners. When they were singing that song and you could see blended voices from the past and blended voices from the future, you could see that energy. And even though it wasn't there physical, it was there in a spiritual space. And so you say, how do we go back to that healing? We have to go back and reawaken that cellular DNA from when we were kings and queens, when we were architects and engineers to the highest level before the indoctrination of the American spirit, and go back. But what as America has taught us so many times is to be afraid of who we are as Africans, to not to want to be associated with the continent, not to be associated with the land. And that's the first part of what any type of colonization is, to make you forget who you are. So when people ask me, why do I change my name? I said, it is mandatory. When not just white people, but even my people, for them to have to say Kweku Amoasi, because in saying the name with Swahili, saying the name from that motherland, it reawakens something in them that they don't know. Because it's a going back to go get who I was. And if we're going to heal, and we were already healed from the beginning, we just have to do something almost like with our body. When you scratch your body and it's a sore, what do people say? Hey, just get out the way, let it heal itself. But the problem is we're busy picking at the scalp, and from a metaphorical standpoint, picking at the staff is what? Learning these American ways, trying so hard to fit in to the colonization and the things of America. And so as we continue to do that, we're going to be further and further away from our spirit, and that's what keeps us in a state of chaos. And the opposite of chaos is what? The cosmos is the order. So for us to be orderly, we have to go back and be ordered to what? The roots of our ancestors. So until we're willing to do that, we're going to stay spiraling in a land that wasn't really meant for us, trying to fit into a place that doesn't want us. When we start talking about this system, how do we fix the system? Well, what's the saying that everybody says? There's nothing wrong with the system. The system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. So if we know the system is built upon our destruction, we know the system is built on oppressing those who are marginalized and ostracized, and we keep trying to fit into that system, what we're saying is we're welcoming the chaos into our life. We're welcoming the mental dysfunction. So until we're willing to go and find who we truly are, tapping into that spirit, we're going to remain in a state of really emotional psychosis.
Okay, a lot to unbox there. I do think that, I've been to Africa 7 times, different countries, different places. Yeah. Very, very much consider myself a Pan-Africanist. But there's something that within the reparations space that I think the lineage folks really have made a strong, compelling, and important point about, which is that our ancestors as Black Americans, as freedmen, as whatever, Negroes, whatever term works for you, also are very specific, right? And they also deserve very specific light. My great grandma, Delphia, Archie, who came off the plantation as a teenager, and she was a teenager when the emancipation was proclaimed. And so I do feel like I gained strength and power and the long lineage and continuity of our DNA by going to the motherland. But I also think there's something really important for us, and I'm talking psychologically right now, but also spiritually, about recognizing the specific sacrifice and the specific triumph of those Black American ancestors, those Black U.S. American ancestors, who built the White House, who built this country, whether they wanted us or not. They would have no country. This nation would not be a superpower without the blood, sweat, and actual human sacrifice of our ancestors, specifically as Black Americans.
Yes. Those are all valid points. And how can you argue with those things? If I could be so humble and submit a caveat to that.
Absolutely.
You look at Ghana.
Yeah.
Look at Ghana with the Black Star.
Mm-hmm.
When they gained their freedom, Kwame Nkrumah said, "We are not free until all of Africa is free." When I went to Ghana and where I received my name in Cape Coast, I said, I don't want to just get a name. Remember, we talked about symbolic apologies. I said, I don't want a name just to get a name. And I remember the chief looking at me and said, oh, no, don't do that. He said, we might not know where you're at, but you're from here now. You are ours. He said, not only will I give you a name, I will give you my name. Kweku is my day name, just he who was born on Wednesday. Atrophy is a person from the village, an elder from the village, and Amoasi is the surname of the chief. And what he said, I want to let you know is this. Maybe this was not your people, but it is now. So I say that to say this. My people came on the boat too. So I know that my lineage comes from West Africa. I know that we are the people who get the blood, sweat, and toil, the blood, sweat, and tears, and toil this land. But I say this, if I get something and a brother who looks like me, and even though his ancestors didn't suffer in the same way in this same land, I would still be remiss for them not to share in the coming up of what we did, because he said, we cannot be free till all of Africa is free, and I feel like that as a person. He said, I'm not Africa because I was born in Africa. I'm Africa because African was born in me. So anybody who's affiliated with the continent, and, we say, our people, but our people were brought here. Let's just say we go with the date, 1619. Well, American wasn't invented till 1776, so that's the British. So that means the British owes us money, and I've heard you talk about this, the Dutch, the Portuguese, the French, and all of those people. And I've heard Dr. Cheryl Grills come on and talk about, hey, you know what? I had cousins in Jamaica. I had cousins in Turks and Caicos. I had cousins in Grenada. I got cousins in Brazil. When you look at how we were wiped and spread apart in the diaspora, in fact, 47% of us were shipped to Brazil. So when you look at all of those places from over, I say we still are one. If we are Pan-Africans, that means no matter who did what or who suffered where, we all suffered in some sense. And though we can't quantify exactly who did everything, your parents might have did 10% of the lift, and mine might have did 80%. But guess what? We're going to share in this pot all together, because at the end of the day, we're one. So to that argument, I don't discount that those with lineage would have an argument to say we deserve more. But if you get more and your brethren suffering, how can you still be free? How can you?
Okay, we have to leave it right there. We've got a hard stop for news, traffic, and sports, and we will continue on KBLA Talk 1580.
You can't fix what you won't face, and we face it every day. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
Here's what's trending this hour. The ACLU is criticizing a Homeland Security plan to equip some ICE officers with electric shock gloves. Amber Duke is executive director of the ACLU of Kentucky.
It's almost sort of out of a dystopian sci-fi movie.
The agency says the devices could cost up to $20 million. Former LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels is taking issue with his alma mater over the use of his jersey number. Daniels' attorney has sent LSU a cease and desist letter after the school issued his former number 5 jersey to sophomore cornerback DJ Pickett, arguing the move improperly uses Daniels' name, image, and likeness. And actress Christy Knowings, best known for her time on Nickelodeon's All That, has died at the age of 46. Family members say Knowings suffered an asthma attack that led to severe complications, and she passed away after being removed from life support. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers blew a 2-run lead in the 9th inning Thursday night and wound up losing 5-4 to the Milwaukee Brewers. A sellout crowd of 46,105 at Dodger Stadium did not like the way the game ended. Dodgers fans booed reliever Edwin Diaz when he was replaced by manager Dave Roberts. Diaz gave up 2 to 3 runs scored by the Brewers in the 9th. The Chargers won their preseason opener at Houston Thursday night, 27-7. The Chargers are at home next Thursday against San Francisco. The Rams play their first preseason game Saturday at Kansas City. The full NBA schedule is out. The Lakers and Clippers open the regular season on October 21st at home. The Lakers play Golden State at Crypto.com. The Lakers will have 34 games on national TV. The Clippers play Sacramento in their season opener at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Let's do this.
Every vote matters. Every voice counts. And between now and November, the decisions made in Washington, Sacramento, and here at home in Los Angeles will shape the future of your family and your community. Don't leave it to chance, and don't leave it to guesswork. KBLA Talk 1580 is your source for the political conversations that matter most. Real talk, real insight, right here. KBLA Talk 1580, the place for politics.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What's good, KBLA delegation? I am Miles Lowe, and I'm excited to be joining the weekend lineup right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Join me every Saturday at 12 noon for the Do Better Show, where we get into the world of tech, AI, the creator economy, navigating your mental health through it all, and have conversations with founders to find out how real people are making real money right now. It's not a course, not a subscription. Classes in session every weekend, live on the air. So if you knew better, you do better, right? So let's make a better you. The Do Better Show, every Saturday, 12 noon, and replaying again at 7 p.m. right here on Unapologetically Progressive KBLA Talk 1580. We got a lot to talk.
Don't be anxious or confused about AI. Take control of your career when you get the skills to tackle real business problems and design specialized solutions. HR Dive reported that entry-level talent with applied AI credentials can receive up to a 25% salary boost. But where do you find training that you can trust? Future-proof your career and deliver more value with Humans Lead the Way AI. Their hybrid learning courses use practical definitions, real-world examples, and strategic insights to help you and your team understand AI with confidence. No magic, no hacks, no shortcuts. Just practical knowledge that helps you use AI more successfully. Don't wait. AI can never replace people who know how to use it well. Register for courses today at humansleadtheway.com. That's humansleadtheway.com.
You know him, you trust him, and now the whole nation is taking notice. Talkers Magazine, the Bible of talk radio, has ranked Tavis Smiley number 14 on their prestigious Heavy 100 list. 100 voices, the most important in all of talk radio. Tavis has moved from number 45 to number 33 to number 16, and now he's in the top 15, right here on your station. His is one of the most trusted, credible, and reliable voices in broadcast media today. Straight, no chaser, always. Tavis brings you the conversations that matter, the newsmakers, the truth tellers, the voices that don't get heard anywhere else. Weekdays on this station. This is what it sounds like when your community has a seat at the table.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome back to Freedmen Friday. We are talking reparations, the mental health aspect of it, something I think we really could spend more time on. We're with Dr. Kweku Amoasi, and we were digging into a whole bunch of stuff before news, traffic, and sports, including, what part of the repair is our responsibility, right? What part of the repair? Obviously, we're not, when you talk about cutting a check, changing policies, and the national, international, municipal aspects politically of reparations, that's one thing. When you talk about healing our spirit, our mind, and subsequently the body, since they're connected, how much of that is our responsibility? How much of it is something that has to be handled independent or maybe separate from the public space.
Yeah, and I know I veered off from that. So to answer that question, 100% of it is our responsibility. You think about a person who's been abused. Sometimes you never get closer from the person who abused you. But that means, well, how do you still stay whole? How do you not let that abuser then take a part of your life? So when we say, what do? It's 100% of ours. And as we talked about kind of like the energy, how do we transfer that energy within ourselves to be our very best selves? So when we started talking about what is the work that we have to do, where we have to look and say, well, where am I hurting? How am I showing this hurt? How is it manifesting in my family? How is it manifesting in my work? How is it manifesting in my community? How is it manifesting in how even I treat myself? And so this is where we had to do a deep dive of self-introspection and really look and say, what are the ways in which I'm hurting those areas in which I claim to love? And once we find those areas, now we have to dig in deep and say, how do I do better? The commercial a little bit before I came on, the announcer said, when you know better, you do better. And that's chuckle because that's what my mother used to tell me all the time when I was a child. So she said, my child is to teach you better. Now you know better, do better. So now we know that we're not getting that apology from America because they had time to. So we're not getting it. So let's not be naive. So now the question is, how do we heal? That's why when you look at people like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Message to the Black Man, when we read the autobiography of Malcolm X, when we read Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Joy DeGruy, when we read Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, when we look at all of these different things, we say, oh, how do I get better? When I look at The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon, what I started to do is I started to look at those liberatory healers, those people like W.B. Du Bois, those people who seem to have an answer to those things, to say, how can I tap into what they were doing? So what I love to do is I love to stay in the community with people who are like-minded, because when I'm around that like-minded, guess what? That's the energy and the spirit I get. We often talk about how does a person like resonate on their frequencies, their vibrations. If you're around low vibrational people, that becomes your spirit. It's a complaining spirit. It's a sagging spirit. It's a woe is me spirit. But when I get around people who say I'm empowered, I understand where I sit in this world, but I also understand they're not going to let this happen. I've worked in corrections for a while, and what the correction person would say, I'll say this and let you ask the next question. He would tell, one of the staff sergeants would tell the people, would say, you might have been born in check, but that don't mean you got to get checkmated. And that's what I tell everybody. Listen, we understand that everything was not set up for us. But when we look at how resilient we are and the beautiful things we've done, we just say, how can we do that? But on a level, we're not just material success. So we have to redefine what success is, but to have that success that brings that internal happiness and joy.
Fahima's in the chat. She says restitution is the duty of the offender, a debt that is owed, but personal and collective healing is on the survivors of that community. Do you agree with that?
I say, that's what we just said. America owes us, so we're not stopping with restitution. And I tell people either they give it to us or we take it. It's got to be one of the two. But as it relates to healing, we can't get that restitution. We can't get, even if we got reparations, but we're not mentally and emotionally healed, it does nothing because we stay mired in that low space. So when we start talking about what do we have to do, what we have to do is re-strategize. Audre Lorde famously said, the tools of the master will never dismantle the master's house. Well, the biggest tool is the government. So as we try to work within this government system, I think is a fool's journey. And not to say that those elders and ancestors who worked so hard from NCOBRA, HR 40, what they're doing, the great work in California, I think those things need to be laid, but just to show us to the point that no matter how hard we try to work, they're not listening. They don't care. They're not going to help us. When we start talking about the ancestors, Frederick Douglass famously said, he said, power concedes nothing without a demand. But people usually kind of leave it there. But he said, find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you'll find the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. I think we are so nice, we are so magnanimous, we are so beautiful of a people that we continue to take this disrespect. And that's why it keeps putting on to us. It was also Langston Hughes who said, Negroes, meek, mild, docile, and kind. Beware the day they change their mind. So I think it's time we change our mind, but we can only do that with getting that renewed mind that we talked about initially.
We're going to go to Dwight from Compton. Good morning, Dwight. You're on with Dr. Kweku. Welcome.
Good
Good morning, Dominique. Good morning, Dr. Kweku. Thank you so much for giving
Good morning,
us the
Dwight.
information and inspiring us. I just had a curiosity. I know every time we hear about the 40 acres given to the slaves from Special Order 15 that President Abraham Lincoln signed. Yeah, and I said if they had, and they did a census in 1860. I didn't even know they were doing census back then. And they had 4 million slaves back then. And I had 4 million slaves, got 40 acres. It would have equaled 160 million acres, which equals the land mass almost of California and Oregon. So that was just kind of an interesting thought that I had.
Yeah, then a lot of it got taken back and seized and whatnot. Not to be depressing, but yeah, I mean, and that's part of the basis for this idea that the knowledge that reparations is a debt. It's not charity. It's not welfare. It is a debt that is owed to us and was promised to us, and is still that debt still due. Did you want to speak on that, Dr. Kweku?
Well, yeah, no, I just think it's to the point where we can say that reparations, as we are hoping to get, will show to be futile. Because once they started to do it and they saw what we was doing, what we could do, what we could potentially could become in this country, they said, oh, we can't have that. So you know, Jawaza Kenjufu famously had the book that kill them before they grow, or one of his things he would say. And I think that was it. When they saw us rising as a nation within this nation where we were once enslaved to now to be rulers, to have people who were sitting governors or lieutenant governors and senators and in the House and whatnot like that, they was like, oh, we have to stop. And that's when the plan came for the convict lease, and that's when the plan for Plessy versus Ferguson and all of those things came to say, hey, we can't allow this. So I'm saying to all of us is we have to recognize they owe us, but they're not giving it to us. They gave money to the Jews. They gave money to the Japanese. So when they want to give money, they know how to give money. They did a Marshall Plan for people who we were at war with to rebuild their nations. So if they wanted to do it, they would have done it. They told us over and over and over again. I was listening to, I love Dr. Cheryl Grills, and I was listening to her on Freedmen, and she was talking about how Governor Newsom did the committee had appointed her, but she said, I'm less than encouraged to say he hasn't been really involved because he was running for president. He didn't want that stigma attached. And you think about any person who's run for president, maybe say for Marianne Williamson, who has really talked about reparations. So what they're telling us is they're not going to give it to us in the way we're asking. And if we keep asking, it's the biggest gaslight. And I think that's, from a mental health standpoint, is the most frustrating. We can't be Charlie Brown trying to kick this football knowing they're going to pick it up.
But we are making progress. I mean, if you look at it politically, I don't think they'll ever be like, here you go, Cinderella, here's your 40 acres. But I mean, you do have commissions, you do have, Evanston where actual checks are going out, you do have people getting land back. So even though it's hard fought every step of the way, I don't know if I'd put it in the category of Charlie Brown, because we are forcing progress.
And I would never fight against progress. I'll never fight against small victories, because those small victories aren't small. But this is what I'll say. See, this is the biggest gaslight. This is the biggest mental manipulation. Remember when Barack Obama was elected and they said, we're in a post-racial society. They tried to fool us.
Yeah, but only idiots. But only idiots believe that. I mean, I'm sorry. Do you live in America? Have you met America?
I'm not going to say idiots.
Okay.
But I want to make, if I can make that same thing to reparations, because I don't want part of what you owe me. Remember Malcolm X said, he said, if the knife is in my back 9 inches, don't pull it out 6 or 3 inches and say we've made progress. There's no progress till the knife is out, the wound is healed, and there's no possibility for that knife to inflict harm on me again.
But you're not suggesting we just throw up our hands and give up.
No, we owe. Listen, what I'm saying, I'm trying not to say on your radio, and with the words, I would put a disclaimer for KBLA. These are the words of Dr. Kweku, not KBLA radio station. I think we are too nice with the reparations. I think we need to do something more forceful. And it doesn't always have to be violent to be forceful. There's many ways. You can be financially violent. You could be violent in different types of ways. That's why Martin Luther King boycotts. They were financially violent. But we have to be violent to the way in which we let them know we're not asking, we're taking. And until we do that, they're going to continue to give us crumbs to appease us, but never give us what they owe us. And until you give me what you owe me in whole, if I loan you $2 million, Dominique, and then you give me back $38, that don't really do nothing for me.
And then I tell you, but we're making progress. I'll give you another 38 tomorrow.
Yeah. And so how long do we wait? Because if we keep saying, give me the crumbs, give me the pieces, as hard as we're working, you're showing me the lack of sincerity. You're showing me the lack of commitment to this. And so what I say is, if we keep asking, they're going to keep saying no. But if we take it, that's why I go back to Langston Hughes. Negroes, meek, mild, docile, and kind. Beware the day they change their mind.
Talking with Dr. Kweku Amoasi. We'll continue the conversation when we come forward. You know, it's a Freedmen Friday, so that means you are on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Just in case you missed our Procrastination Crenshaw Town Hall.
I actually live on this block, and it has affected my life because I'm a knock nurse. We have everyone coming over here that's on meth, drugs, and everything. I've called multiple times to Los Angeles County about once you leave out of here, you will see once you go down to this stop sign, it's pitch black. There's no lights over here.
No lights?
No lights on this side or that side. You have people with mental issues throwing these gates to Crenshaw. Children don't like to come outside anymore on their scooters, their bikes, their helmets, and they're speeding up and down. No regards to life at all. Like I said, I leave out of work. I'm a traveling nurse, so I take my contracts in Los Angeles County, but I may have to go to Montebello. I may have to go to Van Nuys. I leave out at 9:45 sometimes sooner, and it's someone breaking into our mailboxes because they're breaking into our mailboxes.
So now the mail's not coming.
Yeah, breaking your windows in your vehicles, and it's just really sad.
Holding them accountable. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. These are hard times for housing in America. Too many in our community face barriers to safe housing, behavioral health care, and affirming spaces for healing, particularly those impacted by poverty and stigma or incarceration. Rooted in South LA, Ahmad supports impacted communities through housing, wellness, and leadership development. Ahmad provides culturally responsive, peer-led support from transitional housing and mental health services to leadership development and youth empowerment. They offer safe, affirming houses for youth, transgender women, and formerly incarcerated individuals. Therapy and peer support with a focus on healing trauma in Black communities. HIV prevention and care, free testing, education, and wraparound services for whole person wellness. Standing in the gap with health, housing, and hope. Reach out to Ahmad Institute at 323-569-1610. That's 323-569-1610. Or visit amaad.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Molly Bell always says it. What is reparations? It is repair. When we talk about reparations, oftentimes we're talking about checks. Today we are talking about the whole, what does Bob Marley say? Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Dr. Kweku is with us. How do we break Well, you know what? Let me go in because these folks are talking to you, okay? They're talking to you in the chat on YouTube. Forensic Accountant says we need to stop pretending there's a chance we'll get reparations via the Republican Party or even close. Friday Jones says, remember, you take things in silence. Molly Bell says, I understand what our guest is saying, but we're talking about reparations, repair. I guess I agree with President Obama. Speak it into existence. We're making progress, listening. And Forensic Accountant says a party within which your ascension requires loud anti-blackness is never going to be interested in supporting reparations. Friday Jones also calls it spiritual warfare. Thoughts?
Well, you know what? I'm a fan of Friday Jones. I listen to her when she's on your show, too. I love how she spits it and breaks it down. This is what I say as we talk about reparations and the mental health and the healing. These are things that we have to do for ourselves. We say, you know what? We stand tall because we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. So the question is, what will we do for the next generation? For part of the mental healing is almost a Moses mentality. I might not see these reparations. I might not get it. But you know what? I'm going to dedicate my life to making sure that it's better for those who come after us. When I look at the people who we revere from the past, and that's anybody who shed blood or anybody who sacrificed, from the Fannie Lou Hamers to the Martin Luther Kings to the Fred Hamptons to the Medgar Evers. When we started to talk about the Liddy Bees, when we started to talk about all of the people who gave and gave so much, the names that we don't even know, when we respect them, what we respect is what they did so that we could have it better. And so if we want to have a mental freedom and break, it comes into breaking this cycle, because what it is I'm free although I'm incarcerated. I told you I do a lot of work in the corrections facilities, and what we tell the man is, hey, even though you might be literally in this cell, how do you free your mind? And that's the thing for us. And the way you free it is by making sure you rebel against the system that you know is oppressive, and you say, what can I do to break it down? We can't all do everything, but if we all do our part, that wall starts to come down. And then when you leave this place, the legacy is that I did more, then this world was better for me than when I came in. And if we can do that for our people, saying I made it better, but what my urge and my action call for everybody else is to say,
did we lose Dr. Kweku?
To heal yourself is to help others. And when she would tell me that, it let me know the more I help others, the more it helps to heal me. So as we go help our people, that's where the healing begins.
Yes, and that goes back to what Friday is also saying in the chat, which is the mental becomes taxing when advocates fight each other instead of the true enemy. That's part of it, and that also reminds me of one of the things I wanted to ask you. We're so close to the end of this hour, is that how do we break those generational cycles? And those crabs in a barrel is one example of the attitudes that were bred into us, whipped into us, intentionally ingrained in us in order that we would undermine ourselves.
Okay, so I love what you just said, crabs in a barrel. We use that. But crabs don't live in barrels. That's an unnatural environment. If you put crabs in their natural habitat, they help each other. So everybody homework is Google up crabs and how they really help each other. But when you're in an unnatural environment, you're going to fight against each other. But you put them in their natural environment, that's when they become beneficial to one another. So what you say is, one, nobody's ever going to be on one accord. That's why when the great emancipation in Haiti happened, the first people they killed was the collaborators, the people who looked like them that they knew would betray them. So they said, we can't have this division. Now, the thing is, we're never going to agree on everything, but we have to agree upon the big picture. And when you get those people to come together to agree upon the big picture, now we have to reduce the egos, and that's back to the Sankofa. How do we become a community again? How do we become communal instead of this individualistic thing that the indoctrination of this European society has taught us? It's about me and mine and my family. It's about I versus we. And once we go back to our natural environment, our natural mind, that's where the helping versus the fighting starts.
Yeah, reminds me of when we were in Costa Rica, and we saw this monkey who was raised in captivity, who didn't know how to act like a monkey. And then he fell in love with a monkey. This is a true story. He fell in love with a monkey that was raised in a monkey habitat in the wild, and she taught him the ways of monkeys. And for me, the metaphor was Black Americans, the descendants of enslaved persons, teaching ourselves how to be ourselves.
Whenever you look at any movie of some white missionary and they go into the Asian community, the Indian community, they say, oh, this person turned Indian, this person turned that. No, what it was, even that indoctrinated mind, once it saw beauty, it recognized that what they was taught was wrong, and they would drift to what feels good. And that's the same thing for our people. The more we assimilate into this society, the more we're going to fight against ourselves. The more we move towards back to Sankofa, return and go get who we are, the quicker we become mentally whole and we start to have some progress as a whole, as a collective, not just as a few.
Okay, I feel like I didn't get to the long list of questions I had in my mind, so maybe we'll do this again. But we just have a minute here, Dr. Kweku. I'm thinking about habits we need to break or acquire for our own repair. Maybe you could leave us with some thoughts on that.
Well, the first thing what I say is to do is what we said before. Get yourself, acknowledge to yourself that I need some help. And once you say, hey, I've been indoctrinated, what do I do? Now what you do is you surround yourself, whether it's through books, whether it's listening through Dominique, whether it's listening to different books written by the ancestors of people who've done this. Nobody has all the answers. But as you start to read those things, you'll see your own cellular DNA wakens up. And what we've been taught is this: every answer that you ever need to know lies within you. We just have to get out the way.
Remind us how to read what you write, hear your podcasts, etc., Dr. Kweku.
Yeah, so I write an article every week on civic media. It's entitled Kweku Cipher, Cypher, Kweku, Kweku Cipher. I'm no longer on the radio on WNOB because I've moved jobs, so I can't do that anymore. You came on my show one time, which I absolutely love, but I still have things on the past. Me and my sister, Dr. Alicia Moutry, hosted a show, so they can go back and look at the Check-In and Nayumbu Upendo on WNOV radio and see some of our radio shows from the past.
All right. Well, Dr. Kweku, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much for joining us this Freedmen Friday.
No, thank you for having me. Have a beautiful day.
Indeed, we shall. Reparations now. We're going to talk with I think these are Generation Alpha joining us in studio. See their worldview. Need some of that. Ballot refresher coming up next on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Here's what's trending this hour. The ACLU is criticizing a Homeland Security plan to equip some ICE officers with electric shock gloves. Amber Duke is executive director of the ACLU of Kentucky.
It's almost sort of out of a dystopian sci-fi movie.
The agency says the devices could cost up to $20 million. Former LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels is taking issue with his alma mater over the use of his jersey number. Daniels' attorney has sent LSU a cease and desist letter after the school issued his former number 5 jersey to sophomore cornerback DJ Pickett, arguing the move improperly uses Daniels' name, image, and likeness. And actress Christy Knowings, best known for her time on Nickelodeon's All That, has died at the age of 46.